talk show. This is Safe Point. This is the talk show where we continue the discussion around mental health, making sure that everybody has accessibility to has access to mental health conversations and reliable resources, and we do that by interviewing mental health professionals, by interviewing advocates. And tonight we are talking to the amazingly wonderfully kind Dr. Sheritta Strong, who was referred to me. I think that's the correct, I think I'm using English correctly here, but Dr. Jessie Gold. So if y'all remember Dr. Jessie Gold, then like immediately should be super, super excited, because every conversation I've had with Dr. Strong has been just as blowing me away. So this is going to be a really, really wonderful chat about inclusivity and culture and cultural like background understanding and all of that. So well, everybody, welcome, 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 Dr. Strong. She is the Director for Inclusion at the University of Nebraska Medical Center, and she has a lot of roles at UNMC, but she is an advisor and mentor for GRADS, which is an inclusive campus-wide peer mentoring group, and a founding member of IAMHOME, I Am Home, diverse group of faculty, staff, and students. An immediate past faculty board chair and psychiatry director for the UNMC. Totally do not get tongue-tied. I should be doing more of those like ow now brown cow before the show starts. But yes, so student-run free clinics provide psychiatric care at the Charles Drew Health Center. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Strong. Appreciate you.
Yes, thank you for having me. And I just love your platform. I think it's so important to be able to have these kind of conversations where it's not so pretensive, that we can come together and we can just talk about mental health and doing whatever we can to decrease the stigma. And I also want to thank Dr. Gold for referring me, like you said, for referring me to you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, she's awesome, and that's very sweet. Yeah, that's the goal. We're trying to create an environment where people can come and ask questions and feel comfy doing that, and feel like they won't be judged, and know that they'll be safe when they do so. So right. Here we are. So I mean, I gave like a really butchered background for you. So if you could please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you and your interest of study in psychiatry.
Yes, I would love to. So what I've been as a diversity officer, what I've been trying to practice is my positionality. So, and I'll tell you more about what that means. So I am Dr. Sheritta. So Sheritta A. Strong.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I should have asked you. And
That's okay.
I'm so sorry. Okay.
That's okay. So I am a cisgender. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm biracial, so Native American Indian and Black American. I identify as Black female, because that's mostly how the world sees me. Furthermore, my positionality, there was alcohol and abuse in my childhood. But I'm a spiritual person, and I'm thankful that God, I know some of your viewers do subscribe to belief in a higher system. And so I believe that God had his hands on me. And so that's why I am who I am today. I am married. I've been married for 22 years. Aww. And neither one of us we're still alive to tell about it. So that's a good thing. And we're raising two teenage boys that I made a joke earlier that my kids were abducted by aliens and brought back, because, teenagers are a little different. So I just made that joke earlier. So raising two amazing Black teenage sons. I acknowledge in my positionality, I like to acknowledge my privilege as a doctor. As I was born in the United States, I speak English as my only language. I'm able-bodied. Some part of our privileges that we don't even know, that we don't even acknowledge. I'm a psychiatrist. I love what I do. And I'm a diversity officer. So when we talk about positionality, it's how the world sees me, and it's my lens and how I see the world. And that is so important regardless of the work that we do. So, and you asked about psychiatry. So how did I choose psychiatry? So So I won't go too long into that, but going back to second grade, I wanted to be a
Oh my
scientist.
gosh. Okay, okay, we're going all the way back. Let's go. Let's go.
I wanted to be a scientist. And so who would have thought that that would have translated all these years later to being a psychiatrist? But because I was fascinated in how things worked in nature and biology and all those things. Well, fast forward. So I'm going to fast forward a whole bunch of years to med school. Thought I was going to be a family practitioner. And I met a psychiatrist who, again, talked about her spirituality and her practice. But one of the really important things about psychiatrists, we get to spend a lot of time with our patients. We really get to know them. They tell us some of their deep, darkest secrets. And talk about privilege. I feel so privileged that that they trust me with that information. But I will also say one other thing that I've come to the understanding of becoming a psychiatrist, that I had a friend that died by suicide in 1994. And I didn't realize at the time how that would affect my future in
Mm.
determining, my career path. But I know now that that helped me to choose a career in psychiatry, as well as some of the things, some of the trauma, some of the things that I've been through, and how well I can relate to my patients because of the things that I've been through. So that's why I became a psychiatrist. And again, I love it.
That's amazing. That's a beautiful, beautiful backstory. I love all of it. And so you specifically decided. Why did you decide to focus around inclusivity and all of that kind of good stuff?
So very good question, because I woke up one day and said, I want to be a psychiatrist or a
Right.
pediatrician, because I
Sure.
consider
Oh,
pediatrics and
okay.
family medicine.
Okay.
So those were things that I like woke up and said, yeah, you know what, sign me up for that. To be a diversity officer, that wasn't something that I woke up one day and say, oh, sign me up, I want to be a diversity officer. It was something that our campus was moving toward. And I've been on campus, I mean, I've been on campus literally since 1999. So I know your viewers were probably doing the math when I said, oh, married 22 years and teenage sons. Oh, she's a lot older than she looks. Yes, I am. I have been on campus since 1999. So when I say I didn't wake up thinking I wanted to be a diversity officer, it was a position that was offered to me based on a lot of the leadership roles that I've had on campus. And again, I was trained to be a psychiatrist. So to be a diversity officer, there's going to be a lot more training that comes along with that. And it's a privilege. I think, I keep talking about privilege, but it is a privilege to be able to serve in this role. But I think psychiatry, being a psychiatrist and understanding some of the nuances and communication and trauma, I think it well positions me to be a diversity officer.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree on that. That's really also interesting to me that you would say, or that you talk about the fact that you didn't just wake up and go, I'm going to do diversity inclusion, because that is something that is it's a hot button right now. It's something that a lot of people are exploring and figuring out how to do. And you moved into it, and it fits right. It fits right for you. I love that. I love that. And I also, to your point, I don't think any of us can talk about inclusion without talking about our privilege, right? Like I cannot talk about the LGBTQ community and talk about how I belong to it and not talk about the fact that, like, I am still white, and I am I'm cisgender, and I am straight passing, and all of those things. Like, those are all privileges.
Right.
So no matter how hard you have it, there's no reason why you cannot acknowledge that there are certain privileges that you still do have. And
Yes.
so, yeah, and I think that that's an important part of inclusivity. So mention it all you want. You could talk about you could talk about it all day. In general, there is an issue of access to care, and I talked about this in my tweet because it comes up so often, and it's been raised more and more now. Actually, Dr. Jessie Gold recently tweeted about the fact that she's like, it's great that there's all these mental health startups coming about, talking about, let's get people better access to care. But at the same time, it just feels like there's a lot of money being thrown at a problem without anything actually happening to the problem. So I want to talk about the issue itself, and that is like access to care, inclusive care, all of those things. So can you kind of maybe give us a little bit of an overview of where the issues in access to care lie, and specifically in the Black community?
So, of course, there are lots of access issues. And when we talk about it from a public health standpoint, we think of four domains. So coverage, services, timeliness, and the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about coverage, we think about certain populations that don't have access because maybe they don't have insurance, or they're underinsured.
Mm-hmm.
And just not even talking about just the Black community, how many insurance companies don't even cover mental health services,
Right.
or it's covered but at a different rate,
Mm-hmm.
or they're limited at the number of providers. And so coverage is one of the main things, because that's the entry into the system. And so if folks can't get into the system to get care,
Right.
because there isn't, sometimes we can find mental health services that are on a sliding fee scale, but the government isn't really funding those kind of programs. And so how do we keep those programs open? I'd love to refer folks to therapy, and say, yes, Lutheran Family Services, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, they take, and I'm just saying, one of the local organizations, they used to take sliding fee, but are they able to continue to maintain that via government funding or grant services? So coverage is one of the first things. And then the services that are provided.
Mm-hmm.
We know as psychiatrists, I work for the university, and so we provide a variety of different services. We have treatment resistance, we have groups, so we have like DBT groups and anxiety groups. We have a lot of different services, but we're thankful that we have those services at our institution, because all of the services aren't available for everyone. And then how quickly can we get resources? So Marie, if you were to call up today, locally, I know you have a therapist. Hopefully you're still meeting with your therapist on a semi-regular basis. But if you were to call, didn't have access, didn't have contact with anyone just yet, if you were to call, how long does it take to get in to see a therapist or a psychiatrist? And locally, it may take up to 2 to 3 months just to get that first appointment.
I live in Jersey too, so that's like that's a place with high coverage, considered to have high coverage. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's again, we talk about barriers. That's a barrier right there.
Right.
When generally when you're in crisis, you don't want somebody to say, okay, yeah, call us back in 2 months, or yeah, you're in crisis, we'll see you in 2 months.
Right.
But that's the way the system is generally set up, unless there's an emergent reason. Of course, if there's an emergent reason, that we recommend that folks go to the emergency department. And so then our workforce, we're talking about, the Black community, communities of color. There aren't a lot of psychiatrists that look like me. And I'll speak from the standpoint of the state of Nebraska. 150 or so psychiatrists. I am a Black female. There are 4 of us, and we all practice differently. So one's at the VA, one's at county, one sees child and adolescents, and then there's me, and we have a resident. We have a few bilingual psychiatrists, but as far as psychiatrists that see people of color, or that are people of color, we do have some Indians from India that are in the field, but it's very limited at the number of minorities. And so the problem with that is going to see someone that may not understand, the experience that you have
Of
is
course.
a huge challenge.
Of
Mhm.
course. So, and this has been an issue that I've bumped into a lot, is that I say, if you're experiencing that, again, I'm not a mental health professional, right? So if somebody comes into chat and they say, I'm in distress, this is happening, and, of course, here's resources, here are the mental health hotlines, here's the crisis text line, here's, okay, okay, okay. And they're like, well, it's not like that. I have this problem, and I don't, it's not a crisis, but I have the, and I go, okay, well, it sounds like you would really benefit from therapy. I encounter that a lot as an advocate, where people come and think that they can get that kind of personal conversation from me. And I'm like, you would benefit from therapy. And what I have
Right.
received, the answer that I've received back specifically from Black and people of color community members has been, I can't. That's like, you can't. That it is such a privilege to be able to say go to therapy, and it's shameful. I
Mhm.
really didn't have an answer. This person came and they said, "Well, what do I do if there's no therapist that looks like me in my area? I can't access them." Like, forget about even the financial like aspects of it, right? Let's just talk about how hard it is to find somebody who looks like me, who understands my experience. And I was dumbfounded,
Yeah.
like, because I don't have an answer for that. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you, because that is what I feel like you should be doing, and that is all of my training as an advocate and as a in mental health first aid is all go to a professional. So this is the end of the line for me. So I don't know what to tell you. And do you have any kind of advice and input, like, where do we go from there? Like, how do we reinforce that mental health care is needed, but if it's not accessible to you, maybe do this, like, what can we offer?
So I mean, on so many levels, there's a stigma, not just in, the Black community and communities of color. There's a stigma when it comes to mental health services just
Absolutely.
across the board. And
Hmm.
obviously in certain communities, it's worse. And so whatever we can do to continue to have these conversations so that we can help people understand that, to normalize
Hmm.
receiving care.
Hmm.
Even, myself, I've reached out, I've seen therapists in the past. I mean, the more that we can talk about it as a community, the
Hmm.
more we can raise up additional therapists. Even from a church standpoint, having our church clergy, they can oftentimes be therapists as well, but sometimes it's maybe out of their knowledge base.
Hmm.
And so being able and being comfortable to refer and having someone that they can refer to. So I think that's part of it. I think sometimes it's, what fields are people going into these days? I think people are
Right.
going into more technical kind of fields, but we need people going into a lot of these care type industries, in healthcare,
Yep.
in medicine, becoming psychiatrists. I mean,
Yep.
that is so important because the more we have people that look like us in the field, the more we can advocate, like you were, saying, being an advocate, the more we can advocate for us receiving these kinds of services.
And so, how, again, I'm a little cis white girl, like, how do I do that? How do I be a better ally to speak from my personal experience? And as I'm saying this, I feel like the kind of answer is like, it might not be my place, and that's okay as well,
Mhm.
uh because I don't have the experience, and pretending that I do is kind of way worse than than referring out. But how can I help? How can this community help? How can we be better allies in just encouraging people, especially people who, culturally, as you mentioned, like, might have different cultural issues, might prevent them from wanting to talk about mental health. So how do we create an environment in which people can come in here no matter what their background is, and feel like they can talk about mental health?
I think so. So knowing that the numbers of therapists, psychiatrists of color, even medical professionals, because we also have to acknowledge that medical professionals are also, primary care physicians are on the front lines, and so if someone is having maybe a crisis,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes they may reach out to their primary care provider
Uh-huh.
first,
Okay.
or their pediatrician. So I would say the more we can have these kind of conversations, the more allies we can build up, the more advocates that we can build up in cultural humility and cultural awareness, cultural competency. The more we can build folks up in these areas, the better we can advocate for those services. The more people will be comfortable with receiving those services or reaching out for those services. So I have a girlfriend that she does research, so she has a PhD, and she was seeing an older Caucasian white gentleman, and she started to talk about some of the trauma that she had experienced as a Black female in
Mm-hmm.
higher education, in research, in areas where she's the only one all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the
Mm-hmm.
time. So he totally dismissed her experience. Like, basically, I mean, she's a PhD, so I mean, basically told her it was all in her head, the things that she was
Oh,
experiencing,
that's nice.
and to add to the trauma, right?
Yeah.
She's already traumatized by going to
Right.
work every day, and she no longer works at the institution that she was working at because of the trauma that she was experiencing. And she reached out so that he could help her, and he totally dismissed it and
Yeah.
told her it was in her head. And from that standpoint, when we talk about psychiatry, back in the day, mental health, believe it or not, these are things that I've learned over the last couple years, but Black people weren't thought to be able to have a mental illness because from jump, slaves weren't thought to be normal.
Sure.
So remember, we our society, they had to dehumanize a whole
Right.
population of people in order to be able to use them
And justify. Mm-hmm.
to justify it and to
Mm-hmm.
build this country's economy. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
have to be mindful that's
Mm-hmm.
what happened. And there were terms given to slaves when they wanted to be free. It was thought to and I'm blanking on the terms. I'm a psychiatrist and I'm blanking on the psychiatric terms. Okay, but they
You can
literally
definitely do that.
they literally like if a slave was lazy, if a slave wasn't pulling their workload, then they gave them a term, and it's like dysesthesia esthepica something. So I know I butchered it, but it's like
Oh boy.
yeah. So, and they gave them these psychiatric diagnoses later on, after they said, okay, well, we can give them a diagnosis, but and then they said the treatment is to whip them back into place, whip them back into submission. So there was people talking about these terminologies, and so I bring that up just to say that the mental health field, my field, hasn't always been welcoming to people
Yeah.
of color, to Blacks with mental illness. Even to the standpoint, I know your other guest that you had shared with me, she had talked about how the diagnoses of Hispanic and Blacks, when it comes to schizophrenia, when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
psychotic
Mm-hmm.
um, disorders versus mood disorders. So a white person and a Black person can come in with the exact same symptoms, but the Black person may get a psychotic disorder, but the white person would get more of a
Mm-hmm.
mood disorder.
Medical
And that there's
biases. Mm-hmm.
medical biases, right? There's a lot of literature. So it's not just, my opinion. There's a lot of literature that was happening even before I became a diversity officer that is out there, that, again, it's not so comforting. We talk about the restraints, how Blacks are put in restraints at higher rates, or they're being given the older medications that have lots of side effects
Mm-hmm.
versus the newer ones. So there's so much even in our field. But I mean, we're talking about psychiatry. I mean, there's lots of healthcare inequities in a lot of other
Mm-hmm.
fields as well.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about
Yeah. No, no, we have to hone it in somehow because there's a ton of BS happening. So we have to figure out which BS we're talking about in this specific instance. But not to make light of anything. It genuinely it. So how can, if an entire culture has been experiences have been dismissed, have been misdiagnosed, have been scapegoated. Is that a term?
Mhm.
Like,
We'll take it. We'll take
we'll
it.
take it. It is now.
Yeah.
Blamed and incorrectly diagnosed. How can that culture trust
Uh-huh.
medicine or medical opinions actually coming from somebody who are not, who don't look like them? Like, I feel like that's incredibly understandable.
Yeah, that's a million dollar question. Again, I will say that more people are aware. It's um, like the Matrix, the blue pill or the red pill.
Hmm.
Once you take the pill, you can't go back, right?
No,
You're
no,
you're,
no.
you're
Right,
there.
right.
Yes, and so it's like that. The more people start to become more aware that people's lived experiences are different than their
Hmm.
own,
Hmm.
and start to learn more about what other people's lived experiences are. I mean, we can never, Black female to Black female, I can never say that I truly understand what another Black female's what her experience has been. At the same time, I can try to empathize with her,
Of
even though, we
course.
have all those similarities. And the more we can empathize with individuals that don't look like us, things like the implicit association test through Harvard. Harvard has implicit association tests, and I think they have might be 15 or so tests. You can do like skin complexion preference. You can do the women in science one. Okay, so
Hmm.
I thought I was going to have, I said I wanted to be a scientist. I thought I was going to have a bias towards women in science. I don't have a bias towards women in science, but I think the way the implicit association test was, I think it was set up so that to identify, I don't know how it was set up, but I don't have a
Hmm.
bias for women in science, which I thought I would have. So, but there's lots of different ones. And if I were to find that I have a bias towards women in science, then what I would do is, if it was negatively affecting me
Hmm.
or those around me,
Hmm.
I would learn more about women in science.
Hmm.
A great example is, I've heard someone talk about how they did the implicit association test for handicapped individuals,
Hmm.
and it was positive. That doesn't mean that they discriminate against handicapped
Right.
individuals, or if a person came up that they have a preference for white people, for instance, that doesn't mean that they are racist. It just means they have that preference. So in the handicap situation, what that person would have to do is just be mindful. Maybe they use, I mean, something as simple as the handicap stall. Maybe they go into the bathroom, use the handicap stall, and don't think that, wow, if I'm in here, a handicapped person can't
Right.
use the stall.
Right.
So it's as simple as just being more aware of those kinds of things. Not saying that they discriminated against people with who aren't able-bodied, but maybe they're not taking them under consideration. And what can we do as we uncover these biases? Because some biases are explicit, some of them are implicit, and so the implicit association uncovers some of those implicit biases. But when we uncover them, if we're able to uncover them, then what can we do? What can we do to diminish the effects of those biases? What can we do so that it doesn't affect, if you're a leader, if you're a manager, if you're a coworker, what can you do to diminish the effects that it has on those individuals? And like, I'm a diversity and inclusion officer. What can we do to help people feel as included as they can and feel like they can bring their full selves to work, like they can fully belong at their workplaces?
Hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess that is my question. Like, when you start talking about, hey, be more aware of this, be more aware of that, you should probably consider, don't go into the handicap stall. When you start talking about this, you immediately hear, I'm going to be honest, probably a bunch of white people saying things like, well, we have to think about everything now, and we have to consider everybody now. And, in my day, and whatever, bullshit spouts out after that. But also just like, oh, this is basically the sentiment is, this is really hard. And why do I have to do it? Because like you said, I might have this bias, but it's not like I discriminate. It's not like I would ever look at somebody who's handicapped and tell them they can't go into that stall. Well, who cares? I went into it and there was nobody there anyway, you know? So, how do we start approaching people who might be a little bit combative to this kind of stuff?
That's a really good question. Some people that are combative aren't approachable. I mean, I'm just gonna
All
just
right.
gonna
No,
keep it
that's great. That's an answer.
um
That's a heck of an answer.
just keeping it real. Some people that aren't approachable, we talk about a fixed mindset versus a
Mhm.
growth mindset.
Mhm.
Individuals that may respond in that way, are they worth our time? Are they worth the emotional energy? Because
Mhm.
being Black is already, can be taxing emotionally, but being a diversity officer most certainly can be challenging emotionally.
That's
And so
daily emotional labor. Absolutely.
and daily emotional labor. Thank you for saying that. And how much of my emotional energy do I want to put into someone who has already told me that they're not willing to change? I mean,
Hmm.
that's not something that, doing the work that I do, I am so I'm blessed with the work that I do, with the responsiveness that our campus has provided to myself and the other folks that are doing this work on campus. So, but I'm not naive to think that everybody on this campus has a growth mindset. I
Hmm.
know there are some individuals that are like, "Oh, there goes Dr. Strong again. She's in the newsletter again talking about some racism stuff."
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm not naive to think that everybody is on our page, but I will say that I don't get a lot of that negative energy, and I just appreciate, again, your listeners for being so open, and the folks that we have,
Oh no. 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 Can you still hear me?
the leaders on
Sorry.
campus.
Sorry, you broke. You froze. I think it's my internet. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Frozen, frozen. Am I still frozen?
No,
Am I
you're
still frozen?
unfrozen. You're on.
I'm
Can you see
unfrozen.
me? Can you hear me? I'm okay.
No, I can't hear you. I
Oh
can't hear you.
no. Oh
I'm
no.
kidding. I'm kidding. If I couldn't hear you,
Ah!
I wouldn't have responded.
Oh, that's right. Oh my God. I
I
just
can
went
hear.
into panic mode. All logic was out the door. I was like, ah. Oh my
No,
gosh.
no,
Okay.
I
All
can
right.
hear you. Okay, I'm
Okay.
unfrozen. I'm
Yeah, you're
unfrozen.
unfrozen.
Okay.
You're talking. You can hear me.
Okay. Minor
So,
technical difficulty. I have to tell you the story though. I have to tell you the
yes,
story.
please,
Okay.
please, 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 please.
Okay. So she's in one of the colleges, one of the leaders in one of the colleges,
Mm-hmm.
and we were in one of the meetings, and she said that her father, she's a white woman, older white woman, and she has kids and grandkids now. And she said her father would routinely use the N word. And, for a while, it bothered her, but she didn't make it a big deal until she had children
Mm-hmm.
and grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, she said, "Dad, I am not going to bring your grandkids around you." So it was her kids, it was his grandkids. "I am not going to bring your grandkids around you if you continue to use that word and use that language." And as a result of that, she says her dad has like done a complete change.
Mm.
So, like, who was going to have these conversations? I think people that are in close relationship with them that maybe can reach them. Me just being a diversity officer, not having a relationship with individuals, I don't know if I'm the best person to be able to break down those walls. And they say there's like a bell curve. So there's like 25% that's gung ho, yeah, advocates, allies, we're all in. And then there's
Right.
the people in the middle, the 50% in the middle, that we have to continue to bring over to the 25%, to give us, to
Mm-hmm.
continue in that growth mindset, on our journey. Then there's that 25% on the other end that are very resistant to change. The ones that are out there, passing legislature because they don't want us to learn about our history. And it's okay to learn about our history. It's okay. It's not that they're doing it. It's okay. It's important for us all if we can all be on the same page as far as what's happened. But I just give that story because when she shared that, we were in a meeting, we all got emotional because she talked about how impactful that was for her and her family.
Mm-hmm.
Because we also know that there's other folks. I know a doctor that he is Black and he's married a white woman, and her father disowned her for marrying a Black man.
That's still happening.
That still happens. And that just gives me chills because
Yeah.
yes, that still happens. Here they are, they're finding love, they're coming
Right.
together, they're,
Right.
building a life together. And he's a doctor. It's not like, he's on Skid Row. I mean, I don't know, that's probably not very inclusive comment to say. Um, but he's trying to support his wife and have a good life. And her father disowns her. And yeah, that still happens. So I just said all that to say that for that 25%, I don't know if I'm the best person. But what I also appreciate about this role is people reach out to me all the time about different things that happen. So locally, one of the college coaches made a comment about, this was during March Madness.
Mm-hmm.
He said, so it's some madness going on with this comment.
Mm-hmm.
He said, all of us need to keep all of our feet on the plantation. We need to stay on the plantation. He said that to his players. And the players, of course, were
Not
offended.
okay with that. Right.
Right, not okay with that. So someone on campus reached out to me, sent me an email. And so I'm like, give me a call, because some of this stuff, I'm like, I can send paragraphs in an email, but let's just chat about it. And so the person was like, why? What's wrong? What's wrong with sand plantations? They're all over the South. We see them everywhere. And what I tried to help her understand was that racism is so normalized in our country that we don't even know, we don't even understand or recognize when something is being done that is disrespectful or not inclusive to a whole population of people.
Right. Right. Thank you so much. So we like ran through. I know I still have a ton of questions to ask you, but we ran through them, and we're like at question Q&A time. So
Are we? Are we?
we are
Are
like,
we?
yeah, we are.
Because we were talking about access and, well,
Yeah.
some of the questions that, okay, so I'm just going to reflect back, because some of the things that you had talked about was like, what can we do as a community? I remember, when we talked about this
Hmm.
before, what can we do as a community? And we talked about some of the awareness. Um, but like, what can we do now? Recently we had like, the Urban League had an African American Leadership Award ceremony.
Hmm.
And whenever we can have cultural building types of events, and if we can add mental health awareness events, May was Mental Health
Hmm.
Awareness Month. There are things that we can do as a community to, we talked about resilience. That was one of the things that you and I talked about
Hmm.
before. So what can we do as a community to continue to build, resilience and build some of these things up? And I think that's something that we have to continue to work towards, continue to come together and find some of those solutions. But if you say we're at question and answer time, you're the leader, and so I'm gonna
No,
let
this
you
is
lead.
really good. Well, listen, this is really, really good. And although I would love to have you back to continue picking your brain, because this is fascinating to me. And uh, maybe I use the word fascinating a little blasé, but I do mean like this is interesting to learn, and I'd like to sponge it all in and try to walk away a little bit, a little bit better than we before we sat down to this interview, having learned, hopefully, having all of you having learned a little bit, right? But okay. I also had a question, and let me see.
I was just hoping,
Mhm.
because your interviews were so fun and so dynamic, and I was like, oh gosh, she's gonna ask about psychiatry and mental health. And one of the things about psychiatrists, we're not um, we're not the most exciting group of people.
Well, that's what I'm here for. I'm too excitable, so I can't, I balance it out. It's okay.
Yeah, so I was trying to match your energy, match your
You did a
enthusiasm.
great.
So
You're doing a wonderful job. I almost said did, and then I was like, no, you're still here. You're doing a
I'm still
wonderful
here.
job. Can
All
community?
right.
Can we all send some love in chat, please, to Dr.
Thank you.
Strong?
I can't see the chat, but thank
But
you.
like, you're gonna have to trust me. They're gonna send some love, absolutely. But
Okay.
there are questions. Yes, you can only ask one question at a time, fam. But please, once your question has passed, you can ask. You can ask again. So yeah, so don't worry about that. They're sending hearts. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
don't worry. If you've asked a question, you can ask another one. Do not stress. Do not stress. And okay. These are great ones. So let me set this set this
Okay, I'm sending
up.
hearts back. Can you see my
Oh,
heart? Can you see my heart?
yeah, they saw your
Okay, I'm
heart.
sending hearts back.
Oh, they're sending you.
You
They're
said
sending
you
you
had an
more.
awesome audience, and I was so looking forward to engaging with them tonight, even though I can't really see the platform.
That well, yeah, because Zoom is Zoom. You would have had. I probably should have given you better. I'm sorry. You would have had to pull up twitch.tv/Mxiety on your end and muted us, and then you could see chat too. So I'm gonna have to convey to you. They are sending a lot of love. And also we have a command in chat exclamation hugs, and you're getting hugs too. So just know you're very loved and very appreciated. Okay. Okay. So, Seth asked, how do you encourage healthcare utilization to your Black patients who distrust providers for historical reasons, such as the Tuskegee syphilis study?
That's a really good question, because that is still one of the reasons why there's so much distrust in the community. And even, we fast forward to 2021, and we talk about, vaccination. If you
Mm-hmm.
haven't gotten your vaccination, get your vaccination.
Get your
Okay.
vaccine. Well, I've
Yes.
been trying to lead by example, and I think the whole community had a whole. I think a lot of us are vaccinated, fam. Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. If you're
Yes.
not vaccinated, you're
Good.
watching this pod.
Good. Good.
Go do it now,
So
especially if you can. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So
Sorry.
you can see how it affects. I mean, in our community, there is, for the Black community specifically, there's 25% vaccination rate, but I believe our community overall, it might be 50% vaccination rate. And so I have a bunch of my girlfriends, we call us the Mocha Omaha Docs, a bunch of my girlfriends, and we've done at the Girls Club. So like it's called Girls Inc. We've done
Mm-hmm.
vaccination clinics there. At the local, it's like a boys club. It's called North Star. It's called North Star.
Mm-hmm.
We've done, passing out flyers at Walmart. Talked about going to the mall. We have done different campaigns. We have a biweekly meeting. So I just say all that to say that we're trying to do what we can to increase the trust in the healthcare system, because that Tuskegee experiment still affects us today. And that's part of the reason why, that's part of the reasons people will cite that they don't want to get vaccinated, or that they're experimenting. And then we have to just go back to the science. The science has kind of lost its sexiness. It's kind of lost its ability to reach people. And I just really would like to get back to that point where we see that 1 + 1 does equal 2, and
Right.
that's what the science does show us. So it's tough. Thank you for that question. It's healing, cultural healing,
Mm-hmm.
community healing, societal healing. Our United States has to come to a point where we are healing, so that we can continue to have these kind of conversations to build that trust.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, but I mean, that doesn't happen overnight, of course. Is there anything that I can do as an ally? Or again, is it not my place? Or am I not going to be the person that gets through to somebody? Like, would somebody just look at me, from the Black community and be like, yeah, sure, okay, yeah, come back and talk to me when XYZ? How would you, you can talk to me about mental health all you want, but how would you know? Is there a way that I can make sure that these conversations reach the people who frankly like need them, not maybe the most, but everybody needs these conversations. So how do any advice, I guess, just for me? I'm asking in a very convoluted way, but it's a
No,
very
it's
short
okay. It's
question.
okay. I think I followed. I think I followed.
Okay, okay,
So
okay.
one of the main things is follow anxiety.
Mxiety. Oh, I
Follow
feel so much
anxiety.
better about messing up Sheritta. Oh my
Yes,
gosh.
yes. Follow. I did that on purpose, so I did that on purpose. Okay, but follow anxiety, folks. Follow, because she has lots of mental health talks. And say, maybe Marie, maybe you're not comfortable having that conversation, but maybe someone else is. So give them that resource, because I think it's also about building relationships. I mean,
Hmm.
how can, if I don't have a relationship with Johnny, but
Hmm.
I'm saying, hey, Johnny, you need to go see a psychiatrist. Well,
Right.
Johnny's going to be like, well, who is that person? And why are they telling me that? What's wrong
Right.
with me? Why
Right.
are they telling me?
Yeah.
But if you have a relationship with someone, and you are sharing this information in a loving fashion, then they may be more likely to listen to it. But we also know, just, I mean, like I said, the stigma just spans across cultures, and some people just don't see the the usefulness of, seeking psychiatric care.
Oh
And
yeah.
I will share, we had a very high profile um, surgeon that died by suicide within the last few months.
Right, right.
Yes, at our campus.
Oh,
And I mean, so I'm guessing he was 70s. I don't recall, but it was at our campus, high profile surgeon that died by suicide. And when I tell you high profile, it's just, um, and he did not seek psychiatric care. His family saw some changes in him, but he did not seek psychiatric care because of the stigma. And white men are actually at the highest risk for suicide. And it's something that we don't talk about as much. I know that's not necessarily what we're talking about today,
no, but
but the
everything's important.
stigma,
Hmm.
the stigma is huge. And it doesn't, the stigma of mental illness doesn't miss any of the communities. And like I said, when that was high profile, that affected our campus, that affected our whole Omaha community.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just talking about this because I was talking about the fact that I've been on LinkedIn more often, and I had to remove mental health advocate from my title in LinkedIn because I was just not getting anywhere with my job search. And like that's awful.
Oh,
It felt like ripping a part of myself away
okay.
to make it more palatable for others. And I like on one hand, you would say, well, who would want to be hired by somebody who would look at you differently because of that, right? But on the other hand, you don't know what HR person has the keys to,
Uh-huh.
right? That's wherein the issue lies, and it's terrible. The stigma. Yeah, my point is the stigma is everywhere, and anytime I feel like no, we've got a really good handle on this, I hear a story like the one you're describing, and I'm like, no, we don't. No, we really, really don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, okay.
Yeah.
Next question. Okay. Dark Acid asks, Dr. Strong, how can we improve access to mental health care for those hesitant because they get insurance from their employer or their parents?
Well, it's confidential though.
It should
Um,
be.
it
Right.
should be, but I guess if your folks are getting the bill, that is a huge barrier for you. And I guess maybe you're asking because you don't feel like your parents will be open to that. And I would challenge you. Again, I don't know your background, but I would challenge you to talk with your folks about how they feel about it. Um, because ideally, if they're paying for the insurance, you want them to pay for your continue to pay your insurance and pay for your mental health care. And you don't want to have to pay for it out of pocket, because you could
You
always
usually
go.
can't.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, because you could go to your provider and say, you know what, don't bill me for this because I don't want it to go to my parents. If it's that, maybe you've tried to have that conversation and your parents weren't open to it. I know that happens too. But maybe try to open up, a conversation, even if it's not just to fill the waters. Because oftentimes what happens is we don't have these conversations with our family members, but our family members have gone through the exact same thing. When I revealed my trauma to my mother 3 years ago, that I grew up with in my household, my mother didn't live with me. I learned that my mother had a similar trauma as a child. But in saying that, I can still tell you that 3 years, 4 years later, I still have not talked to my mother about those traumas, because we also have to keep in mind that it affects us differently. So even though you may be willing to talk about it, like I may be willing to talk about it with my mother, whatever you're going through, your parents may not be able to face some of the things that they may have gone through as well. But of course, I have no, information to be able
Mhm.
to make any of those kinds of assumptions. But I would hope that you would have support from, if not your folks, from other folks, from other people, so that you can, have these kind of conversations, because mental mental illness will make you think that you're alone. And there's so many other people out here that will support you, that love you, that will encourage you, that want to see you live your best life. And so you just have to remember that, even if it's not your folks. Sometimes it's not my folks. I hate to say it, but I don't talk to my parents because of some of the things that I have gone through. But I was in my 40s when I finally came to that conclusion. So, not advocating for anybody not to speak to their parents, not advocating for that. Okay, I want to make that clear. I'm not
If
advocating for that.
they're already getting that from me, it's fine.
Okay. But sometimes we have individuals in our lives that we feel like we have to be in relationship with because we share blood, we share genetics.
Right.
But if they're not for you, it's okay to love them from a distance. That's what I'll say. It's okay to love some folks from a distance.
Yeah, well, frankly, I mean, I like how you phrase it, if they're not for you, but um, people use the word relationship and don't realize how in the one-sided manner in which they use it. A relationship goes both ways, and if you feel like you're not getting in return all of the love and
Mhm.
effort you're putting in, and you're simply expecting to continue a relationship with somebody because you happen to be related by blood, it's a good time to reevaluate that relationship, and recognize that you can have a good, healthy, back and forth reciprocal love with
Yes.
people who are blood related to you or not, and decide what to do from that. Yeah.
And I high five you on that.
Yeah.
High five you on that. High five you on that.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. No, we advocate that
Yeah.
for that a lot. We talk about,
Yeah.
being raised by narcissists, and that experience, and that is something that I'm very familiar with, and it's very contentious. It's a reoccurring conversation because people love to talk about what family should be, and not enough people talk about what family actually is sometimes for some people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're at our last question. Cartha Bruja says, it feels like minority youth and white ally youth are far more likely to stand up and call out bigoted BS. Is that what you're seeing in your work?
You know, I only, for the most part, I deal with more of the older folks, because as a chief diversity officer, I deal with more of the leadership. But I will say, from a community standpoint, I do see more of our younger folks advocating for themselves and advocating for others. Like, back in the day, it's like, we all knew that there was a bully. There were bullies, but how many of us stop the bully from bullying?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's more kids these days, more young people these days willing to say bully.
Right.
I'm not gonna cuss on your. I'm not gonna cuss on your thing. I'm not gonna cuss on your
It's
thing.
PG-13. It's PG.
I'm
It's like
sorry.
one cuss word, right? You can use one cuss word. You're good. You're
Shut
good.
the f. More bullies are willing to say
Right.
and leave my friend alone. So I
Right.
will say, and I'm glad for that question, because we talk about different generations, and the generation that's coming up, my boys are independent thinkers. That's why I feel like they went to Mars and came back. But I have to be thankful that they're in the generation that they are, because our young people are going to make some tremendous changes in our society, in our world. And I'm really thankful for that. So I wanted to give one story related to that. One of the young women that graduated, she applied for our scholarship. I'm in Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and we give out scholarships, $1,000 scholarships to the community, young women every year. And in her statement, she goes to a predominantly white Catholic school. And in her personal statement, she talked about the school not being diverse, and how whatever she did with her friends, they advocated for them. And now they have a person that's like a diversity advocate at their school. So, I mean, she just graduated from high school, and in her short 4 years at this high school, they have a diversity advocate. So our young folks are going to make they're going to make some waves. And I'm happy, because I need y'all on my team.
That's
Okay.
right. That's
Yes.
right. That's
Yes.
right. So we have a very informal last question for you, which
Oh.
because this conversation started before, and I apologize in advance. But do you happen to know the definition of the word fuzzle? The bum fuzzle.
Bumfuzzle?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So that's actually a homeless person that gets really drunk and then falls in the gutter.
Did you come up with that, or is that like? Because I had a similar, because they asked me earlier, and I had a similar one where I said it is when somebody has an opinion that's like doesn't matter. It's like bum fuzz. So it's like the hair off your butt. Like it's so inconsequential. Like, oh, what is this? Oh, I just came up with some bum fuzzle to answer your question.
So I was convincing though, wasn't I?
You were very convincing. I love your that straight delivery is just like
That's
top
that's
notch.
a psychiatrist
Yeah.
because people like take me seriously and I can say anything and they're like, "Oh, really?"
Oh
And I'm
my
like,
God.
"No, I'm just playing. I'm just playing."
I love it. Well, you said you were trying to match my energy. I was trying to match yours, and I was trying not to get like too overexcited too. So, did we match each other's energy, fam? That's the question that I
What you
have.
think?
Yeah.
What you think?
What did everybody think? Did we did we come into the middle somewhere? I
Yeah,
would
we
love for you to come back because we have so much more to talk about.
yeah,
This was not even the surface. This is
thank you.
yeah. Yeah, it's very similar to confuzzle to confuse from what I can understand. Yeah, now that we get a stream game, we should get a stream game of Balderdash going. It was a good interview.
Yeah.
Okay. Seth, so we've closed questions for now. I'm really sorry because we do have to let the lovely Dr. Strong go. But fam, thank you so much for being here. Please go follow Dr. Strong at the very least on Twitter, and then you can check out more about her career on the UNMC website that I'm also posting the link to in chat. Dr. Strong, where can people find you or reach you or contact you or otherwise just talk to you? Where would you be comfortable?
I think Twitter is good. I also have a Wikipedia page. So
Oh, cool.
yes, so that's exciting. Some of the stuff that you already that's on my UNMC page as well. If you Google me, I mean, there's a lot of information out there, but Twitter is a really good way for us to, stay connected. I subscribed to Mxiety's YouTube channel, so I don't have Twitch, so
Yeah. Well,
I
so
don't do social media except for Snapchat, Twitter, LinkedIn,
yeah,
Facebook,
you don't do social media
Instagram. But
at
I
all.
don't do
You don't
social
do
media.
social media. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have
So
Twitch.
I recently decided to stop posting on YouTube. So I'm sorry about that
Oh,
because of their awful policies with
okay,
white lives matter too and stuff and all of the
okay.
verbiage. So you probably could watch this video here more so. So you might need to follow here. You don't need to subscribe. That's the good news. It's just to follow. But
Okay.
anyway, thank you so much for being here. We will be right back, everybody. I appreciate you all so much. You've asked wonderful questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will be right back.